In this video, we're going to talk about one of the organizational structures or patterns that writers use in order to organize their ideas. And that pattern is called the definition example pattern. What a definition example pattern is used to do is introduce key terms that might be technical or that readers are less familiar with and define them with examples, or to introduce more abstract concepts and define them with examples in order to invite the reader to a deeper understanding. The terms that are defined are always terms that are central to the meaning of the essay. And so we're going to take a look at Naomi Klein's The Change Within. We're going to examine the first three paragraphs and see the way that she uses the definition pattern example in order to introduce her essay. Here's how it begins. This is a story about bad timing. One of the most disturbing ways that climate change is already playing out through what ecologists call mismatch or mistiming. This is the process whereby warming causes animals to fall out of step with critical food sources, particularly at breeding times, when a failure to find enough food can lead to rapid population losses. I'm going to pause right there. The two words that we get in this opening paragraph are mismatch and mistiming. These two words are technical terms that are central to the meaning of the rest of the essay, and the sentence that follows is a definition. Mistiming or mismatch is the process by which animals fall out of step with critical food sources, and this is caused by warming or by global warming. The next couple of paragraphs are going to give us several examples that will help the reader to better understand or illustrate this concept. What does it mean to fall out of step with a critical food source, and how is that related to global warming? Let's continue on. The migration patterns of many songbird species, for instance, have evolved over millennia, so that eggs hatch precisely when food sources, such as caterpillars, are at their most abundant, providing parents with ample nourishment for their hungry young. But because spring now often arrives early, the caterpillars are hatching earlier too, which means that in some areas they are less plentiful when the chicks hatch, threatening a number of health and fertility impacts. Similarly, in West Greenland, caribou are arriving at their calving grounds only to find themselves out of sync with the foraged plants they have relied on for thousands of years, now growing earlier thanks to rising temperatures. That is leaving female caribou with less energy for lactation, reproduction, and feeding their young, a mismatch that has been linked to sharp decreases in calf births and survival rates. Scientists are studying cases of climate-related mistiming among dozens of species, from Arctic terns to pied flycatchers. I'm going to pause there again. So we already have the introduction of the term mismatch or mistiming, and then we get the definition of that term. Again, when an animal falls out of step with a critical food source, a food source that their survival depends on. From there, to help us as readers who may not have a strong science background or a biology background to better understand that, we're given two specific examples and then three more less specific examples. The first specific example is the songbird. We know that the caterpillars are no longer ready when the chicks are hatching. Therefore, the chicks don't have something to eat, which has lots of impacts on them, lessening their survival rate. The second specific example that we get is the caribou. The caribou are arriving at a time where the forage plants are not ready. And so they too have lessening survival rates. So those are two specific detailed examples. Paragraph 4 begins with a mention of two more examples, Arctic terns and pied flycatchers. And so the writer is also suggesting to us that outside of these two specific examples, mistiming is something that is impacting biology and biological ecosystems much broader. But she tells something really interesting in this paragraph. She takes that concept of mistiming, a biological concept, and then she applies it to human beings. Let's read this paragraph and see what she does here. Scientists are studying cases of climate-related mistiming among dozens of species, from Arctic terns to pied flycatchers. But there is one important species they are missing, us, Homo sapiens. We too are suffering from a terrible case of climate-related mistiming, albeit a cultural, historical, rather than biological sense. Our problem is that the climate crisis hatched in our laps at a moment in history when the political and social conditions were uniquely hostile to a problem of this nature and magnitude. That moment being the tail end of the go-go 80s and the blast off point for the crusade to spread deregulated capitalism around the world. Climate change is a collective problem demanding collective action, the likes of which humanity has never actually accomplished. Yet it entered mainstream consciousness in the midst of an ideological war being waged on the very idea of the collective sphere. So here she does something different because she's still using the term mistiming, although in the previous four examples of mistiming, we're talking about biology. We're talking about a group of animals who are moving into their reproductive phase or who are moving into their migratory phase, and the food source that they used to rely on is no longer available. That's a mistiming. But then she shifts, and when she begins talking about human beings, she says, our mistiming happens in the way that here is a social and political crisis dealing with climate change, but it's happening in a time period where universally human beings don't have the appetite for collective action or collective response to a problem that is this great. As she continues the essay, she will use this idea of mistiming to elaborate on her criticism of what she calls late stage capitalism and talks about how it is that capitalism is a barrier to this sort of collective action that she's talking about.